Even Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyers don't believe that immunity provides Donald Trump with a way to get out of his 34 felony count conviction in New York. And the judge in his order reminded Donald Trump that his lawyers don't believe that immunity applies. And that is driving Donald Trump mad. I think I figured it out. And I'm going to go over it right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. What am I talking about? Popok, get to it. All right, let's do it. 41-page decision by Judge Merchan. You've heard all about that probably already. The judge analyzed the immunity decision by the United States Supreme Court issued last July, mapped it onto the 34 felony count conviction for conduct before Donald Trump was president, and said it didn't apply. But worse, and this is what got Donald Trump's goat, the judge reminded the world and Donald Trump that the lawyers for Donald Trump don't even think the immunity decision applies, because the judge said in his ruling that the defense is conceding that none of the acts that form the heart of the indictment. This is the Stormy Daniels hush money payoff conspiracy election interference case. That's a mouthful. None of those actions are covered by immunity. None of them are official conduct. None of them are core constitutional conduct. I mean, having a private sex act with an adult entertainer and then trying to pay it back after you're president really doesn't, that's not what the framers of the Constitution had in mind, if you know what I mean. And the judge reminds the world that even Donald Trump's lawyers don't think it applies, because they never argued that the core conduct that is at the heart of the indictment is covered by immunity. The only thing that they argued is a more nuanced, esoteric argument about evidence, that some, not all, that some of the evidence, basically needles in haystacks of evidence that were given to the jury, may have touched on some presidential function because it took place at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Because some of what Donald Trump did after to cover up or to pay back the hush money happened while he was president. It's those very discrete strands of evidence, small snippets, very, very discrete testimonials by his executive assistant, Madeleine Westerhout, by his press secretary, Hope Hicks, even aspects of Michael Cohen's testimony about his interaction with Donald Trump after he was president. Because remember, election interference was the goal here. Beating Hillary Clinton was the goal here, and it worked. He got in. So, of course, some things happened. They didn't wrap up the whole conspiracy in time. The whole payback to Michael Cohen hadn't happened in time. And the judge said, that's all we're talking about. We're just talking about evidence, which means I go to that section in the Supreme Court ruling that talks about evidence. And in evidence, the only thing the Supreme Court is concerned about is that a prosecutor doesn't use official conduct, core presidential conduct, to try to prove unofficial or private conduct. Got it? You could only, under the immunity decision, you can only prosecute a person who happened to have been president at the time of some of his actions for conduct that doesn't fall into the official conduct, like the job description for the president, stretched to its outer boundaries, because that's what we do in our law, or what we call core constitutional function, core constitutional powers of the president, which are things like listed in the Constitution, like the right to make treaties, commander-in-chief, the right to pardon, things like that. And and all it says is, if you're going to try to prove that there was some private conduct, because of course, the president's a person, he can certainly do things outside of official and constitutional powers and conduct for his own personal affairs, no pun intended. And if he does that, the only thing about evidence is you can't use official conduct evidence to prove private conduct, prosecutable behavior. That's it. And the judge says that didn't happen in our case, in the Stormy Daniels matter. He said, first of all of it happened, the majority, the gravamen of the conspiracy happened before he was president. That was the point, to pay off Stormy Daniels. So there wasn't an October surprise. All that happened in October. Some of the money went back to Donald Trump, to Michael Cohen after the presidency, but that doesn't matter. And the judge says, so what? So Madeleine Westerhout testified about scheduling a meeting with Michael Cohen or writing a check and having it on his personal checkbook and sending it back to Michael Cohen. Who cares? Hope Hicks, same things, that she testified that the campaign was troubled by another outbreak of allegations that Donald Trump is a misogynist. Okay. And then she later became the press secretary. Okay. Who cares? And he went through each of those. He also reminded Donald Trump that his lawyers also fell down because they don't regularly practice in New York State court and they don't regularly try cases, even though they're going to be the number 2 and number 3 in the Department of Justice soon, that they screwed up during the trial because they didn't preserve the objections. They had an opportunity to stand up and say, objection, Madeleine Westerhout's testimony is covered by the immunity and supremacy clause and it shouldn't be allowed. And they never did that. Or even because the trial took place before the immunity decision, object on some sort of presidential power issue. Never raised. Never raised when Michael Cohen testified his White House interactions. The objection never raised when Hope Hicks did. Or maybe Hope Hicks. So the judge says, you didn't even preserve most of these objections, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But the takeaway here, and this is what I'm sure has gotten Donald Trump's goat, and this is why he's railing against the guy who's going to sentence him, which shows you the degree of insanity that Donald Trump is exhibiting. If your liberty was in the hands of a trial judge who hasn't yet sentenced you, and you need him to go your way, calling him an animal, calling him psychotic, calling him partisan and biased, calling him conflicted, all untrue, saying that his ruling will turn the Constitution on its head and the presidency on its head, all untrue, is not helping you. In fact, you have another pending, and I'm talking to Trump, you have another pending motion that the judge still hasn't ruled on. That pending motion is about whether equity, justice should intervene and overturn the jury's solemn decision, 12-0, to convict 34 times. It's not one felony, it's 34 convictions. And he's still pending with the judge. The judge reminded everybody in a recent order, I still got that motion. I haven't decided on it yet. And now's the time, because he's pissed off that his lawyers, screwed the pooch and didn't raise the issues properly and were never arguing. See, it's like Donald Trump, somebody woke him up out of a deep slumber and whispered in his ear, did you know that your lawyers didn't raise the immunity decision that way? We were only fighting about evidence? No. then he blows up. That's the hidden gem inside of the 41 pages. And that's what I'm here to talk about here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. All things at the intersection of law and politics are this should be your home. I'm hoping it's your home. MeidasTouch and Legal AF. Podcast Legal AF. Wednesdays, Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. Right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on all podcast platforms of your choice. New channel, Legal AF, that I'm curating at the intersection of law and politics. Some amazing new content over there. Legal AF MTN, help us grow that pro-democracy channel. We need it now more than ever. Do you know how many lawsuits are going to be filed after Donald Trump has to use executive orders to try to implement his worst policies and instincts, his un-American attack on women, on voters, on immigrants, on our air, on our water? Get ready. He's selling America to the highest bidder. He just posted for $1 billion investment. We'll speed your approvals, including environmental. Come, shit all over our country. We welcome you. We need to cover that. Law and politics, Legal AF. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.